you obviously need a spring watch, or just another excuse to buy another watch. Flowers blooming, green returns to the trees, the snow disappears, and the full parkas, hoodies and gloves and other winter paraphernalia are replaced by looser, lighter clothing and perhaps even color. Unless, of course, you're Swedish and then it's skinny black jeans all year round. So, what does a spring watch need to be able to do? Well, you're going to be seeing that watch more because that watch, first of all, is not going to be underneath you neck deep in goose down and synthetic fill. This is where the trucker jackets, the hoodies, the visible layering and all that start to come into play. The white t-shirt or short sleeve might not have found its way out of the dryer just yet, but a long sleeve white polo may have. So there's more leeway to experiment with. I do think though that we're looking for watches with a little bit more power, a little bit more pizzazz and a little bit more presence. At just under 500k, my heart is set on the Baltic HMS 002. We're talking about a very wearable 37mm watch, 12mm thick dress sector dial style watch on a blue leather strap. We have 50 meters of water resistance, which is a little bit on the low side, but I defend my choice based on the logic that in spring you may be near water, but it's still too cold to go in. 42 hours of power reserve from a very reasonable Miyota movement. The reason I dig this configuration is because of the silvered sector dial and the strap configuration. In the sole configuration, you have a watch that bridges winter blues and whites into navy jeans and a white t-shirt seamlessly. It's infinitely versatile because of that fresh, uncluttered and bright dial. You can, however, throw on a more muted strap. I'm thinking calf leather or forest green, and you can still wear it in those cooler, wetter spring days. Whether you're all in on Barber wax jackets or for more colorful bomber jackets, this model will suit you well. It will also style well with a suit and more relaxed attire. Seiko makes its appearance at just under $1,000 with one of the legendary watches and fan favorites, the Alpinist. A 40mm Seiko with 200mm water resistance and the Seiko 6R35 movement with 41 hours of power reserve. It doesn't have the best chronometer specifications, but Seiko movements last for ages and 6R35 is one of the good ones. There are a number of variations in terms of dial color and strap options, with the green and off blue being my personal favorites. I have never particularly appreciated Seiko bracelets, and much like the Rolexes of yore, this is somewhere where they really could do to improve. They're not terrible, but they are just a little bit jingly-jangly, and that's why I typically lean towards the strapped versions. Having said that, the Seiko straps are not super high quality either, but again, for the price. And usually they take a little bit of breaking in to cut through some of their inherent stiffness. Also, the crown at 430-ish is a peculiarity of this model that some people have a hard time with, but not me. I think it's a plus. The green Alpinist on brown leather strap is more autumn than spring. The blue is muted and definitely not in your face, but I think they both stand well as spring watches. The green is for that Barber wax jacket, leather jacket, or Flint and Tinder Last of Us jacket wearing individual who at the instant of purchase chucks the faux alligator strap out the window and throws on calf leather or even better, a NATO. For the more jeans and a t-shirt kind of guy, it's the muted blue version on a pearl-on blue strap. I would have really loved to have the SPB 297 on the list, but it's too far above $1,000, but that's also a very cool watch that could absolutely go spring vibe. Okay, we're moving into real money territory. Or it's always real money. 500 is not cheap, but 5,000 is a different ballgame. At around 5,000-ish, I'm bringing in my own personal spring watch, which is the Tudor Black Bay GMT Pepsi, which I did a review of recently. It's not a BB58, so no 39mm here. This is a 41mm and about 50mm lug to lug. Compared to a Pro, I think though its overall proportions are way better. It's more balanced. It's a gorgeous watch with a muted Pepsi that isn't over the top, but colorful enough to make it eye-catching. Where a Pelagos or a Pro are more generally versatile due to their toned down aesthetics, this watch has occasions and styles for which it is better suited, and other styles that are not so much. It's more restrained in the color palette than its big brother, the Rolex GMT Pepsi, which I personally think is a key strength of this model, and it is, of course, cheaper and available. Throw this on the included NATO and you have an outdoorsy model which will also serve you well on that Easter holiday weekend getaway to somewhere in the Mediterranean. Bali or wherever. And then you actually have a reason to have that GMT function. At 10K, your options are, of course, huge. But the reality is that by now, 10K doesn't even necessarily get you a Rolex. Yes, maybe an OP, but a sub is clocking in at just a smidge over 10K. So what else is there? I have two options that are very different and will cater to two very different tastes, but both are very spring and also very summer. The first is a big boy. It's a Panerai Luna Rossa, a 44mm Panerai with a classic crown guard locking mechanism, off-white sandwich dial, and red small seconds hand. This watch is way bigger than many people go for these days. And yes, Panerai have been in the doghouse for a while because of questionable quality, dodgy marketing, and low-end movements. This movement is one of the good ones though, with 72 hours of power reserve and not some dodgy sourcing history. This watch is a big boy, but the dial lends itself to pretty much any strap type, color, leather, rubber, NATO. You can do anything with it, and although not as big as previous Panerai models because of a slimmer profile and stubbier lugs, this is still on the big side. I personally would be happy to wear it. Others would think it too big still. Having said that, you're going to be getting those spring vibes all the way, and I'm sure you can still wear it in Miami and be cool, sort of, ish, you know, if you don't have a fully blinged out AP. For me, it's the Seamaster 300. It's still affordable. It's a 42mm watch with an excellent movement, and you can find it in a million configurations. In this case, I'm going blue dial or green, both of which are stunning. Not just because of these colors, but also the texture and pattern of those dials. You need again to consider your wardrobe and a little bit to see which one fits best, and the blue is likely to be more flexible in terms of fitting your fit, but that green is just spring, life, energy, jungle, rainforest, and tropical beach. You can't really go wrong. And finally, we get to the watches where money is no object. You can get a Richard Mille lollipop. Is that a spring watch? No, that's an ugly watch. Which leaves me with two spring watches. The one only an infinitely small minority of us will ever get our hands on, but it's the Patek Aquanaut in blue. The color is blue, the size is 42.2mm, the rubber strap is a stunner. The price is, if you have to ask, it's not super versatile, but if you can walk into Patek and get this model, then you can also afford to get the green at the same time. Buy both, why not? You have the money apparently. Then you have all situations of spring covered. This is a gorgeous watch, sometimes eclipsed by the Nautilus, but it's a stunner in its own right, and spring vibe, that it has. The last watch is also pricey. You can get it in a cheaper steel version, which is also very cool, but the spring watch is the IWC Portuguesa Yacht Club Moon and Tide. This is a $35,000-ish watch. It's got a gold case. Incidentally, the gold is somewhere in between Rolex's regular yellow gold and their Ever Rose tone. It's a tone that works really well for this watch. It's 44.6mm. In some ways, it's fairly reminiscent of a Rolex Yachtmaster on the Oyster Flex, only a million times more interesting. The dial is a deep sunray blue with red accents on the seconds hands and on the subdials. It's got applied gold numerals at the hour indices and the northern and southern hemisphere moon phase, plus high tide and low tide indicator on a rubberized blue strap. No, you don't need it, but this is for the complication, friends. This watch is so good looking, it's borderline ridiculous. Yes, at 44.6mm it is a big boy, but when you have to stuff in a moon phase and a tide movement, plus a display caseback, you're going to need some real estate to show off the workmanship. And no, at 60 meters of water resistance, it's preferable that you do not fall off your yacht. IWC has sometimes had some questionable pricing on their entry models where ETA movements commanded an unreasonable premium. But in their high-end perpetuals and moon phases, you get some serious horological credibility. In this model, you get all that in a stunner of a watch. That perhaps is a borderline full summer, but I would gladly wear it in Miami, Singapore, on a yacht cruise down through the Adriatic or off the coast of Santorini. And bonus, as opposed to the Rolex Yachtmaster, this watch, you can just go online at iwc.com and click add to bag, mash in your visa details, and boom, a couple of days later, you actually have a $35,000 watch. It's insane what you can buy online these days. It's not like we ever need another excuse or justification to get another watch, but hey, now you have spring as a new justification. Whether it's the Baltic, the Seiko, the Tudor, or the IWC, or the Aquanaut, you will be well served in your spring wardrobe. What's your spring watch? Let me know below. Comment, like, subscribe. Cheers.